check whether it has started. Oh, I'm on the instant Wi-Fi. Why is that? There are a lot of dropped frames. Why is that? There are a lot of dropped frames. Is the video available? Okay, students. If this is too blurred or if this is not good, okay, you please let me know so that I will upload a different version, because I am also doing the recording offline, and this recorded version will be full resolution without any dropped frames or anything. Okay, so going back to the class. So we were actually learning about the files and exceptions, right? So we learned about files and then we learned about exceptions. Now we have practice exercises for the files and exceptions, and the first question that we came across was we had to create a program that would read the numbers that are listed down in text file, okay, which are separated by spaces. So the numbers are separated by spaces in the text file. And now you need to find out the number which is the highest among those. Okay, so that was the question. So the question, let's try to read the question again. Define a function called largest which takes a single argument. The argument passed will be an open file object. Read the data in the file. Assume that the data is separated by spaces and are all numbers. Find the maximum value in the file. Okay, so we know that somebody had already sent it, like for instance Bhadraksh Bhargava had tried to share the code for the same, okay, and we saw that the code looked like this. Okay, so let's try to understand what exactly Bhadraksh has tried to do. So the first line, right, this will not work. Why? Because the file path is the name of the file that you need to provide, okay, and it can be a absolute path or it can be a relative path. Although this is a relative path, right, there is a space in between, and not sure whether this would work. So let's try to create the data file. Okay, so let me save it as data file. Numbers separate spaces .txt. Okay, so here 23, 24, 25, 99, 200, 1, 1, 5, 6, 7. So this is what they have mentioned in the document. I mean in the question, in the problem statement, that we have a file which contains numbers in it and the numbers are separated by spaces. Okay, and a big number and maybe a very small okay, I think let me move this number somewhere in between, so maybe over here. Okay, and we saved it. So the file name is what? Data file underscore number separated by spaces. Yeah, so we have given that file name here instead of file path. Okay, earlier Bhadraksh had given it as file path. Okay, so now we have given the file name. So yes, this is the program. So let's not put it this way, let's put it slightly differently. Okay, so let's put it here and these two things also over here, and let's put it in if name equal to main. Okay, so which means that this function will be called with the opened file object, and the function will return the biggest number. That is the idea. So let us see whether this is going to work. Before we do that, I want to go through these things. So for that, let me take the terminal, IPython 3. Okay, and file is equal to open a data file separated by data file number separated by spaces .txt, and it is should be opened in read mode. Okay, and okay, now file.read, okay, is going to give us some value. I am going to call it as a is equal to, or I am going to call it as data. Okay, so data is going to be the things that are in the file, which is these numbers, right? Or let us say that if there are additional spaces, all those input will be taken by the data. So you can see that 23, 24, 25, 99, 200, this big number 1, then 5, and at the end you have a space and you have a \n, a new line character also that is there. Okay, and now so we know that it has read the file with the file.read. Now what is this rstrip and lstrip going to do? So let us try to see what is rstrip and lstrip. How do I know what is lstrip and rstrip?
So R means right, L means left, I think.
Yes, okay. So yeah, so R means right and L means left. That is obviously right. Okay, so in IPython terminal, this is how we will see what is the function going to do, or what is the method. So in this case, right, I shouldn't call it as a function, I should call it as a method, because the method is inside the class. So it says that returns a copy of the string with trailing white spaces removed. Okay, and what about lstrip? Lstrip says return a copy of the string with leading white space removed. So why don't I use strip straight away? Bhadraksh.
He is not in the meetings.
Okay, he is not. Oh, he joined. Okay. So Bhadraksh, are you there? Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was a bit late, sir.
No issues. So we were I did not notice that you were not here. So we were discussing the program that you had given yesterday. So this is the program that you had given. Only difference that I made is I moved this file is equal to open into the main part of the file, and
yes, sir.
I have moved this function call and printing the largest number also in the main part. Okay, and we were discussing what happens in content is equal to file.read, rstrip and lstrip. Okay, so here we have tried in the IPython terminal, what does the function rstrip and the one, oh I'm sorry, what does the method rstrip and what does the method lstrip do? So we have noticed that it returns a copy of the string with trailing white space removed if it is rstrip, and if it is lstrip, it will remove the leading white space. So why didn't you use strip?
I don't know, sir. Must have been.
You do not know. Okay, so that is that, yeah. So which means
that would have been better.
Okay, yeah, because because you don't have to call both the both the methods one after the other, right? You can just call strip.
Yes,
strip does both lstrip and rstrip. So data.strip. So we know that data contains what is there in the file. Now we are going to do data.strip. Okay, data.strip.
Actually, sir, while I was making the file, so I by mistakenly added an extra space towards the right while I was writing the numbers.
Yeah.
So I used rstrip. Then again I thought, what if there is an extra space in the start? So I added again lstrip again. I didn't think to use strip.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. So Bhadraksh is saying that in the first case he had to remove the trailing white spaces, and then he thought about the leading white spaces. So that is why he has used rstrip and lstrip. In our situation, we can straight away use strip. Okay. So we know that data dot strip is going to give us this particular output, and if we try r strip dot l strip, right, that is also going to give us the same output. It is not going to make any difference between the data dot strip and data dot r strip dot l strip. Okay. Now let us see what happens. So the content, right, so the content is data dot strip. Okay. So the content is equal to data dot strip, and let us see what is there in the content. It is the same string that we have printed here, correct, right? Okay. Now next thing is Abhishek, Bhadraksh has taken content and split the content into multiple elements based on the spaces. So content dot split, right, with space is going to give us the list of all the numbers that are there in the file, but these numbers are represented as strings. So it will give us a list of the strings which are numbers that are separated by the spaces, correct. Now what happens? So content dot split is giving us the list with all the values that are separated by spaces. Next is a function called map. So I have told you list comprehension, right? I have told you list comprehension where I have said for say let me show you that. In line number 12 we have done content dot split. So for numbers in content dot split or number in contents dot split, okay, and I do like this, int of number. Okay. Now this is going to wait, I think yeah, it is only content, not contents dot split. Okay. So that was a name error. So we will try it again, and we have seen that 23 was converted to numeral 23, 24 was converted to numeral 24, 1 was converted to numeral 20, 1 was converted to numeral 1, and so on. So this list comprehension that we have seen over here, right, it does something like iterating over each element and applying the int of number to each of the element. So same way we have another function called map. Map is an anonymous function. I think that's okay. Let's not worry about all those things. Let's just assume that map will take a function and we will give the list of the items that we need to apply this function over. Okay. So make an iterator that computes the function using arguments from each of the iterables. Stop when the shortest iterable is exhausted. So that is what Bhadraksh has written here. So let's try to understand what Bhadraksh has written over here. Okay. So here Bhadraksh has called the map function, map int comma content dot split space. So let's try and see what map int comma content dot split with the space, right. So we have already done it with the list comprehension over here. What we have done is list comprehension in number for number in content split. Another way would be using the map where we are passing the function. So this is the function to which we are passing these iterables, and we have a map, okay, and the map is then converted into a list. Okay, the map is then converted into a list and is sorted. So once it is converted into a list, right, we can see that it has given us the same output that we have got from the list comprehension, correct, right. And then we are calling the function sorted. We know that I can say that let us say L1 is the list, let us assume L1 dot sort is there. Okay. Another way is that this one does us in place sorting. Okay. Another one is sorted that returns the sorted list, return a new list containing all items from the IEEE in ascending order. If you give the reverse is equal to false, by default reverse is false, and if you keep reverse is equal to true, you will get it in the descending order. So, sorted list of map this particular thing in reverse order is going to give us the list of numbers in the reverse order. So, let us try that. Okay. So, we have list of map, okay, and then we are trying sorted, okay, and reverse is equal to true, and that is going to give us a list which is sorted in the descending order. Okay. So, that of 0 is going to give us the biggest number that was there in the file, data file number separated by spaces.txt, which had the values, these values in the file. Correct, right? Is there anyone who has not followed what we have done? Is there anyone who has any doubts here? So, without actually trying to run this program, right, we have already figured out that yes, it works. So, if we run the program, let us see what happens. Run %run -i read file multiple int in file, and it returns this as the value. Does everyone follow this? Is there anyone who has not understood this?
Understood, sir.
Okay. Anybody has any doubts regarding the particular code that we have discussed? So, I can actually do it either keep this one, okay, or I can also, if I want, let us say, have the list comprehension in between, right. So, I will show you what I mean by that. Okay. So, int of number for number in content.split. I can do it this way also. Would it work? Instead of the below line, right, I have just made some subtle changes to the code, and I am saying that this is also going to work. Is it going to work? Let us run it. Yes, it worked without creating any trouble, without creating any errors. Correct?
Sir, which one would be faster?
That is another thing. So, we can, I think there is a percentage time also, I guess you can do. Okay. So, which is going to give us the CPU times, user, system, and the total time and the wall time in millisecond and microseconds. Okay. So, right now we have the list comprehension here. Okay. And next is we can try the the map, and I am assuming the map is going to be faster here, if I am not wrong. If I am not wrong, the map has to be faster here. So, let me try to run it. Return list of numbers, wait. Yeah, okay. So, earlier, right, we got with the list comprehension, we got the time as 1.29 milliseconds. Now, let us try to run it. It gives us 997 microseconds in total. So, we know that now the map function is faster than the list comprehension. Okay. So, definitely map is faster, I have no doubt about that. Okay. And the wall time is 731 microseconds. Earlier the wall time was 960 microseconds, and the total was 1.29 milliseconds. Over here it is just 997 microseconds or 0.997 milliseconds.
Sir, why would map be faster?
Because of the implementation, because how map was implemented.
Okay.
And list can contain it's the implementation differences. Okay, that's how we can close the discussion for the time being. Anyway, so I will go forward with the next set of things. So, they have mentioned do not use load text. So, let us try then the IPython whether load text is a is a normal function in the IPython. No, it is not, but because it is in the numpy, if I am right, import numpy as np, and np dot load text is what they are mentioning. So, in numpy, right, we have a load text function where we can give the file name, okay, and we can give the data type, and it will actually take the data from the files and convert it into the one single row or number of rows, etc., based on how we call the load text. Okay. So, going to the next one. The solution, this is the solution. So, instead of using the list comprehension and instead of using the map, we could have also simply created a simple empty list called data, okay, where def largest f is the opened file name that we are, opened file object that we are passing to the function largest. So, def largest f data is equal to empty list, okay, for line in f, for field in line dot split. So, this would be much appropriate, because even when the problem statement says that the numbers are separated by spaces, it is also possible that the numbers could be separated by new line characters as well. So, for line in f, for field in line dot split, okay, data dot append float of field, return max of data, correct. So, that also will give us the thing. So, let us try to see whether this is a better solution. Okay. So, what I am going to do is let me make this let me make a copy, okay, and here we are going to have the list comprehension. Okay, here we are going to have the list comprehension int number for number in content dot split. If I make any mistakes, do tell me. Okay. Another one is let us say, so I am going to comment this, because we know that this one is slower. Okay, I've commented this particular thing, and I am going to create another largest. Okay, let us call it as file itself. Data is equal to empty list, then for line in file, okay, for field in line dot split, okay, and data dot append float of field, correct. Yes, and then we have return max of data. Okay. So, we have another function now. So, let us now try to run the first one once with the percentage time, okay. And one additional thing, earlier when we ran it, it was showing it to be 997 microseconds, but this time when we are trying it to run it, it is showing to be 887 microseconds, which means that the time that a particular program takes to run on a computer is not a definite exact number, okay, because it can vary depending on the load on the computer. All right. So, when I run it the next time, right, it is giving me 861 microseconds. So, I cannot say that it is always going to be this much time, right. I can never say that. At this time it has taken 1.08 milliseconds, now it has taken 1.5 milliseconds, 998 microseconds. Okay. So, it is like you are you are in the physics lab in 12th standard and you are trying to calculate the gravity from the pendulum experiment. Okay. You do not calculate the gravity just with one experiment, right. You will have a number of experiments, number of observations, and then you will take the average of it. That is how you will get G. Do you remember that? Gravitational force? Yes. Okay. So, same way this number, right, it does not, you cannot say that sir, it had shown me 995 microseconds earlier, but now it is showing to be slightly higher. Why is it so? Because the computer, right, can be doing something else. Say for example, I have also the browser open. What if I open another tab and you know start browsing YouTube in the background? In that case, my computer will become slightly more slower. Okay. Now going back, this was the third thing that we have tried. So we are going to comment the previous map based function, and we are trying to see how much time it might take for the new implementation. So let's try to run it. Yes, it printed 1e plus 19 and it took 708 microseconds. Okay, and you can see that that is somewhat faster than the both the implementations that we have done, right? So which means that the speed of a particular program will also depend on the kind of implementation we have done. Okay, so that is fine. Don't worry about you know whether yours is the fastest implementation or anything, but you should be in a position to identify which are the functions or which are the things that you might do on your computer which can for that particular program, which can make that program run faster. Okay, so this was one solution. Another solution is, let's say we have defined the largest function and the result as a negative number minus 1 e raised to 20. Okay, it's a very big negative number. For line in f, for field in line dot split, result is equal to, I am going to compare with the current value, that is minus 1 e20, and the value that I have obtained from the file. So I will compare these two, and then I will store the max of these two in the result, and the next I will get the next field, compare it with the new result and the field, and I will keep on updating it until finally I am done reading the file and whatever I have in result will be returned. Is that clear? Do you guys agree, and do you guys understand? Do you guys follow?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is another solution. Now another question. Okay, we have a pendulum.txt file. Print the second column alone to another file called call2.txt. Remember to add a new line. Okay, so it's saying that let me see cat pendulum. Yeah, so there's a file called pendulum.txt here. Okay, that is there in the folder. So we can see that there are two values in each line which are separated by a space. So the question says that there are two columns in the pendulum.txt file. Read that, print the second column alone to another file called call2.txt. Remember to add a new line. Who is going to do this? Or you can try doing that. Okay, so let me just skip through the things. You can see even if you see the solution, right? I am not going to stop it there. I am not going to discuss that. I want you to write it by yourself if possible. So there were two exercises. I mean there were two solutions. I have just skipped both of it. Please go through it. Try to do it yourself. Now another exercise. Simple exceptions. So write a function called mySum. The function is passed a single string with terms separated by spaces. The string contains both names and integer values in arbitrary order. Find the sum of all the numbers in the string. So that is the question. Got it, right? So the question is, you are given a string which can contain anything. It contains numbers as well as some text. I am not interested in the text, but I want to find out what is the sum of all the numbers in the string. So I have my sum 1 fox, 2 dogs, 3 jackals. and that's giving me 6. My sum, 3 blind mice and 1 man, that's going to give me 4. So this is the next question that you need to solve. Okay, so I will not again what I will do is I will this is which slide number, let me make it very small so that you may not be able to copy it directly. Okay, I am making it very small so that I will scroll through. Yeah, and now we have another question. So what was the previous question? Simple exceptions. Okay, you need to write a function my sum which can take a string which has 1 fox, 2 dogs and 3 jackals and will give you the sum of the 3. And another question, raising exceptions. Write a function func which takes a single integer argument x, and if x is not a positive integer value, raise a value error. If x is not an integer type, raise type error. Got it, right? So we know that we can raise the value error and the type error if we want based on certain conditions. So we have a function called func which takes a value x. The value is not a positive integer value, then you will raise a value error. If x is not an integer type, raise a type error. So yes, Bhadraksh has written something. If x percentage, okay, that's a mistake, right? That's not correct. That's not complete, right, Bhadraksh?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, Abhishek Kona has joined. Okay, Abhishek, are you in this class, Abhishek? Abhishek Kona, are you in this class? Just let me check.
Yes, sir, he is in the class.
Okay.
In this class.
Okay, just.
Name is Kona VLN Abhishek.
Oh yeah, correct. Okay, yes, that's why I got confused. Okay, so if the value of x is not a positive integer, you will raise a value error, and if x is not a integer type, you will raise a type error. So that's the question that you have next. So shall I go forward? So I am not going to discuss the answers for this one also. Okay, now we have covered the very basics of Python, right? We have more advanced topics remaining. To know more about the Python programming language, you should definitely read the official Python documentation. And I had also shared the tutorial with you in the first class, if you remember. Go through that, please. Okay, so that was this, an informal introduction to Python. So I'll just share it with you once again. And the reason why I am sharing it to you is you should be constantly nudged and told that you are supposed to read, okay, and you are supposed to read and write code also, read textbook, write code, etc., and not just listen in the class and not just look at the slides, because the slides are not going to give you the entire world. Okay, it's just going to give you a subset of the entire world. So that's the slide number 12, and we will go on to the next slide, which is about the good code, which we have already discussed, but I will just skim through the code once. So the idea is we have to write better code. Okay, so for that you have to use a good editor and master it. For example, right, I am using this Emacs editor, and let's say I want to write a line of code here, right? If I press tab once, the editor is going to take me to the next level where I can write that line. Okay, so I press tab twice. Earlier it was showing it to be over here, but now it says that if I want, I can write a line which is within this particular for loop. Okay, or I press tab once again, I can write a code here, or I press tab here, I can write the code here also. So these are the 4 areas where I can write my line of code. Okay, so which means that the editor does this without me having to count the number of spaces or anything. I don't have to count the number of spaces in my Emacs with my Python mode. Okay, it will automatically put 4 spaces. That's the beauty of it. Okay, let's take the gedit for example. So I am taking the gedit. Okay, Control O, and I think it is here in Control L, Python 3 read line, right? Let's read file, multiple int in file. So we are going to open that file. So we can see that this also shows you the proper color highlighting, etc. This is gedit, and you can see that when I go to the second line and I press my right arrow keys, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have used spaces, although I have used Emacs editor and I have saved it, and in the Emacs editor, although I use tabs, it has only put spaces in my file. Okay, and you can see that in my gedit, if I want, I can actually specify the tab width. So I will specify the tab width to be 4, and I will use spaces. So whenever I use tab, the key tab on my keyboard, it will replace that one single tab with 4 spaces. Okay, so which means that I can just go here and press tab, it will take me to the correct places, and those are all spaces that has actually been used. Now I am going to just turn off the use spaces feature, and I am going to press tab here. Okay, I am going to press let us say tab here, and I am going to press the back arrow. You can see that this is a different character, and this is not the same as the space. So this should not be done. You should only use spaces. Okay, so if you are using the gedit, you can use spaces, and you can actually mention the indentation level to be 4. So use spaces, and you can see that this one has already opened it in the Python mode. So that is why we are getting this syntax highlighting. All right. So I am closing this gedit. So it says that use a good editor and master it. That is the most important thing when you write a proper good Python code. Then you can use for command, you can look for command completion, but this command completion is not available in all the editors. You have to use some VS Code, or you have to use Emacs also you can use, but you have to enable some init scripts to run those things with the command completion. Then you can have documentation built in. So I think VS Code does that. Then you have to follow PEP8. I told you PEP8, right? And what is linting support? Linting support means that PEP8, say I have to use PEP8 standards for coding, but how do I know whether I have followed PEP8 standards? That is where the linting tool helps. So I told you the other day we showed you a website where I copied and pasted my code to check whether it is following the PEP8 standards or not, and we saw that we had to use additional spaces and comma had to be added before the space was added, and certain things to enforce the PEP8 standards. So a tool which will allow us to go through the code and check whether it is following the particular standard or not is called a linting support. And then jump to the source, meaning that let us say okay, so that is something that you have with a particular good editor. Say I will tell you VS Code, which means that if you press control and click on the function, right, largest, let us say I click on control and largest. In my Emacs I have not actually enabled that, but in VS Code, but I don't have VS Code on my system probably. Let me see, I might have okay, I might have it could be called code because I might have used it with your seniors. Let me see whether I am able to open it. Yes, I think VS Code is there. Yes, VS Code is there. Now what we are going to do is Python 3. So let's try this file only with Visual Studio Code. Open. Oh, what is this? Okay. Docker install. Do you want to install that? Okay. Now what it means is right now, right, I have clicked on largest and it shows where all are the largest functions used. Now when I click on largest by pressing my control button, right, and click on largest, you can see that it has started going somewhere. I don't know whether this is going to work or not, because I haven't used it with single source files. Okay, I've used it with big projects where when I click on it, it will open up the correct file where this particular largest function is defined. Let's see whether it's going to work or not. No Python interpreter is selected. You need to select a Python interpreter to enable features such as IntelliSense, linting and debugging. So select the Python interpreter. Let me select user bin Python 3, right, and pylint is not installed. So we have already just seen that linting is the format source code checking, right? So we can have tools for that. So it is installing pylint and the necessary things with pip. I did not enter any commands because the VS Code is a graphical user interface based editor. So it has done everything. Now let's see whether anything is going to happen. Okay, and I'm going to click on largest and click on control largest, and you can see that when I press control and try to click, right, I did not click it now, and when I try to click, you can see that it has been underlined and it can take you to the definition of the code. So when I click on it, it has taken me to the definition of the code. So same way, let's say print, I don't know whether that would work. So control print, and it has opened buildins.pyi and it has said def print is here, do not change anything. Okay, over here, if you change anything over here, then you might have to reinstall your Python completely. Alright, so what I meant to say was, you have linting support, you have jump to source, you can also have integration with IPython. So it all depends on your editor. So you can actually use an integrated development environment, or you can use a very good editor like VS Code or something like that, or even Emacs. Okay, and then other command line, handy command line tools are, do not ever hesitate to read the code. Okay, so if somebody is giving you the code, say for example Bhadraksh Bhargava had given me the code, right, with lstrip and rstrip. If I do not read it and I just run it, yes, it works, but I have to read it to be able to appreciate the way how he has done it, how he has thought about it. And that is why I asked him, why have you used lstrip and rstrip? Why didn't you use strip directly? Okay, so all of those things. So you have to keep reading code. If you do not read code, then it will be very difficult. Learn Git and use it. So this is something that I have told you previous year as well, I believe. Okay, so I can say getting started with Git, right, and it is going to give you the whole details about how to get started with Git. Okay, so please go through that. Okay, so this is for using with GitHub. You can actually see Git is not related to GitHub. I mean, Git is not GitHub. GitHub uses Git. That is how you should see it. Okay, and getting started with Git. Okay, so I'm going to share with you that code as well. Please get started with Git as well. So you have to read code, learn Git and use it. Okay, use a good editor, use Okay. And what is the purpose of programming? So, this must be very funny, right? But yes, this is true, because if I write a code that nobody is able to read and understand, then how is it that when I am not there, somebody will be able to make changes to the code and make it better, right? So, essentially the programs must be written for people to read, and that is the reason why we say about PEP 8 standard and proper spaces, indentation and all of those things. Okay, of course, Python programming language will not work without if you do not give the proper indentation. So, programs must be written for people to read and only incidentally for machines to execute. So, people must be the first consideration when we want to write a program, because I can write a program with just x is equal to y plus c plus d plus I into c, whatever, but what are these x, y, I, c, what are these variables, etc., right? Do you have any idea? No, it is not possible. So, it is also important to have meaningful variables. So, simple guidelines for writing good programming programs are: name things well. Do not just say I dash, d dash. Okay, name things well. Code should be a pleasure to read. Comment should be superfluous. Okay, so you should not add comments. See, Python programming language has obviously right now for us seem to be something very English like. Okay, it's pretty simple to read. So if there are some comments that are just going to explain things in a harder way, try to remove it, do not use it. Okay. Then the bad variable. So let us say that we have a program like this where a is equal to Jan, Feb, Mar, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, dot split, and d is equal to an empty dictionary. D of a of I is equal to I plus 1. Okay. So I know what is a of I. A of I will be a of 0 will be Jan, and a of 1 will be Feb, so on. Okay. And then d of Jan will be 1. Okay. And I is equal to input, take the first three characters, dot lower, okay, print d of I. Alright. So this is a program that we have over here, but d, a, I, right, this becomes very cumbersome to read. So instead of that, if you replace it with the proper variable names as months to okay, and something like that, it would be a pleasure to read. It will be easier for me to read. मेरा दिमाग में easily चल जाएगा, नहीं तो थोड़ा टाइम लगेगा, मुझे सोचना पड़ेगा, अरे ये आई क्या है, अरे ये जे क्या है, ये आई इधर इन्होंने क्यों डाला है, ये सब मेरा mind, it will come to my mind, right? So if for those students who do not understand Hindi, what I said is, if you do not use proper variable names, right, and you just use I, A, B, C, D, P, R, Q, C, Z, and multiple such variable names are used throughout your program, then when I read your program, right, it might take me more time, because I would have to now figure out what is I, what is the context of I, what does I mean, and why has this person put I here, not P. So all of those questions can happen, right? So use meaningful, better variable names. That is very important. We have already discussed this in the PEP 8 discussion. Okay. Remove the superfluous comments. So do you need the comments for months is equal to this thing, store month names, a dict to map the names to ints? Do you need that information? No, right? When you read this particular some code, you will easily understand that. So you can actually remove those comments if you want. Okay. So signs, a comment signals that things can be clearer. Cut pasting, begs, refactoring and reuse. So if you put a comment, right, then it is possible that maybe you are not very clear with the thing what you have done, and if you have copy pasted code from somewhere, right, refactoring means that it is quite possible that you have copied and pasted some ugly code from somewhere and it doesn't actually go good with your code. So which means that you need to actually go in and read that code and change that code slightly so that it will become better code. Okay, so that means refactoring means that you are going to change the code slightly better and then you can reuse it. So initializing arrays, solving equations, plot results. Okay, these can be very simple commands if you want. Okay, but instead of that, right, if you use it as functions like this, that would be better, correct? So try to avoid comments as much as possible, that would be better. Then you have to use reusable code. So whenever you have a particular set of statements that implement a particular logic, if you can actually refactor it into function, right, then you can actually use that function as a part of a module or just as a function multiple times. So each function does one thing well, and you should have small functions convert inputs to functions plus args / keyword arguments. Okay. And another thing is DRY, which means that it is also similar to the refactoring into functions, reusable code. DRY means that don't repeat yourself, meaning that if I have to have the same logic in my program multiple places, then I should definitely have taken it out as a function and use the function call in those places rather than actually writing the logic in that part again and again. Okay, so never be overwhelmed. Whatever topics that I have taught you so far till today in these classes are pretty simple and small Python programs. All what you need to do is you have to start writing. Okay, okay, don't be overwhelmed, don't let that be your stoppage. Okay, don't let that be your blockade. So start writing, do not let the rules dictate terms, use these as a guideline. Remember that coding is iterative, meaning that you may not write the best code of your life in the first time. Okay, as I told you, see this particular code itself, we have seen that the largest function can be defined in multiple ways, right? So it is quite possible that I may not have come across this first or the second or the third one in my very first program when I wrote my very first program, right? That is not possible, which means that you become more and more proficient in programming and your programming style also improves over the period of time. And another thing is, if you are actually going to program an entire big system, you cannot actually do everything in one day and say that it is done. No, you have to build it part by part, slowly, one by one, bit by bit. That's what it's called as. Remember, coding is iterative. So in both ways it is iterative. You should be comfortable throwing code away. That is another thing. If you have written some code and you do not like that code, do not keep that code as comment in your program. You should just delete it. That is what you mean by should be comfortable throwing away code. Learn how to use basic Python. Built-in Python data structures is what something we have learned. We have not looked at Jupyter notebooks, but I have asked you to look into that. But yes, we have looked at IPython and NumPy. Okay, so that's it with the good code. And now I want to, do you have another class right now, students? I want to take you to the IIIT curriculum page and let's just skim through the syllabus once. Okay, so CS151, Introduction to Python Programming, and we can see that let's try to read and understand whether we have covered all the topics or whether we have left out anything. So the introductory topics: installing Python, basic syntax, interactive shell, editing, saving and running a script. Yes, we have done that. the concept of data types, variables, assignments, immutable variables, numerical types, arithmetic operators and expressions, comments in the program, understanding error messages, conditions, Boolean logic, logical operators, ranges. Yes, we have done all of the introduction. Correct? Yes. And next is loops, strings and files. So, control statements, if else, loops, short circuit, lazy evaluation, okay, string manipulations, subscript operator, indexing, slicing a string, files, manipulating files and directories, OS and sys modules, text files, reading or writing text and numbers from or to a file, creating and reading a formatted file, CSV or tab separated. Okay. So, there are certain things that we have to cover here, which are especially the OS and the sys modules, okay, and the directory manipulations and manipulating the files and directories with the OS and the sys modules is one thing that is very important. Okay, and then data types and functions, list, tuples, dictionaries, basic list operators, replacing, inserting, removing an element, searching and sorting lists, dictionary literals, adding and removing keys, accessing and replacing values, traversing dictionaries, design with functions, high redundancy, complexity, arguments and return values, formal versus actual arguments, named arguments, recursive functions. So, these things are also something that we have already completed. Okay, so which means that introduction and data types and functions is completely full, and now we have some things that are left out in the OS and the sys modules. Okay, so let me use the OS module and the sys modules for you. So, I am quitting from the IPython, clear, and I am just typing the pwd. I am in the home Anoop Python 3 folder. There are multiple files called .txt files, .py files, okay, and those are the things that I have in my folder. Over here I am calling the IPython 3 interpreter, okay, and I am going to use import OS, okay, OS dot, what are the functions that I have in OS? OS dot list directory. I can use this particular function, okay, and this function returned me a list of all the files and the folders that are there in this particular directory using the os.list directory. So, OS is a operating system module, okay. So, OS question mark will tell me that OS routines for NT and POSIX depending on what system we are on, okay. So, let us try to see os.list directory, okay. Return a list containing the names of the files in the directory. Path can be specified as either string, bytes or path like object. If path is bytes, the file names returned will also be bytes. In other circumstances, the file names returned will be string. Okay. Now, let us just try to see what were the output. So, it has returned as strings, okay, and let us try to see how many files there are. There are 54 files in this particular directory as per the list that is mentioned by Python. So, let us see whether it is correct or not. So, what I am going to do is I am going to press Ctrl H in the home Python 3 folder, okay, and I am going to select Ctrl A, and you can see that when I press Ctrl A, it has written down on the bottom one folder selected containing one item, 53 other items selected. So, which means that there are 53 files and one folder, meaning that there are total of 54 names that are there in my particular directory. And which directory am I in? os.current directory. So, I can actually try to figure out which directory am I currently in by using os.current directory. Oh, it is a string, okay. So, it is just showing me the current directory. So, can I use os.current directory to get the complete list, complete information? I could. Yeah, tell me. Okay. Yeah, so it says that you should not use, I mean, os dot current directory is just going to give us dot, which is actually correct, but it's not useful, right? Because we are actually interested in the complete path. So yeah, os dot get cwd is going to give us the complete path. Okay. So os dot get cwd, get the current working directory, is going to give us the complete path. So you can see that whenever I had a doubt, right, which means that even I get doubts, definitely. Okay. So os dot current directory, I just searched for this particular when I had a doubt, and I figured out what is the best way to get it. Next I have os dot is file. No, os dot path dot is file. Yeah, is file. I have a function called is, it's a method, os dot path dot is file. So I can give os dot path dot, then I'm going to give this particular thing, underscore underscore PyCache. Okay, I know that it is not a file, I know that it is a directory name. So I'm going to give that as the I'm going to give that as the argument to the method is file, and it is going to give me a false because it is not a file name. But if I give the ladder.py, okay, so let me copy it with the quotes, because I know that I have to pass a string. So I am going to pass is file ladder.py, os.path.is file ladder.py, and it says true. So which means that I can now identify that it is a file. Okay. Next I can have os.path.is directory. I can ask the Python method if is it a directory or a file. So I am trying with Python cache, PyCache, right? And it had earlier returned false when I tried to ask it os.path.is file. No, it is not a file, but I am now asking os.path.is directory, and it's going to give me true. Okay. If I give ladder.py, right, ladder.py in the os.path.is directory, now it's going to give me false because it's a file. And one more thing, github.com/anoopjt and repositories. If you look at the function, I mean, if you look at the extensify repository, right, let's just go and read the code once. Okay, I have used the OS module there, I have used the MIME types module there, I have used the time module there. Okay, and let's see how I have used the OS module. But you can see that when I wrote this code in 2011 and I added it into Git, right, this code has not followed Pepite standards at all. Okay, so the current working directory of Python is os.getcwd. So I've used the OS here, and next is, you know, when I had to find out the list of all the directories. Okay, so I have a function called os.list directory, os.list directory. So I can use it to return a list containing the names of the files in the directory. Okay, so the list directory, that's the one thing that we have already used. So it's going to give us the complete files and the names of the files and the directories in this particular path. Okay, and I'm going to iterate over the individual file names. So it should be for file in directory list. Okay, and if the file name contains a space, okay, if the file name contains a space, then I am going to rename the file with something else. Okay, so you can see that essentially I have used the OS thing, and I have also used os.popen. Let's see what is os.popen. So os.popen, right, is going to run a command in the in the actual bash shell and return the output of that into Python. So, let us say I have taken the shell here and I type ls here, right, I typed ls here. So, I can actually type this command using the os.p open and I will be able to get the output from there. So, over here I have used os.p open file hyphen, okay, oh I am sorry, yeah, file space bi plus files in read mode. Okay. So, what it does is, let me show you what it does. So, files minus bi YouTube no, let me say workshop checklist.org. Oh, it's file, okay, not files, okay, and okay, file space minus bi workshop hyphen checklist.org. It is now telling me it is a text / plain char set us ASCII. Okay. Now, I am going to take another file name. Let us say this PHP applications submissions.html. So, file minus bi the new file name, and it says that it is a text XML char set us ASCII. I am trying to see whether there is any other kind of file that could be here. So, I am trying to open this. I am trying to see what is this NEP conclave 7 August 2020. Okay. So, I am going to do file minus bi that thing, and it is going to tell me application vnd.oasis.opendocument.text, character set is binary. Okay. And I am going to open another file let us say logo.png. Okay. And I am going to see file space minus bi logo.png. Let us see what it is going to return. It is going to return that it is an image of PNG type and character set is binary. So, I use this os.p open. So, let us try os.p open. Okay. So, this will be opened as a file handler. So, f handler is equal to os.p open file space minus bi. Okay, I know that I have to use the file name. So, here I am going to use logo.png, okay, comma in the read mode. So, this is what I need to execute. So, I have the file handler f handler dot read dot split. So, I am going to read it, okay, and it says, oh wait, where am I right now? I am in the home menu Python 3. So, there is no file called logo.png here. So, which means that I need to do an ls here and take some file name that is already here. So, let us say fib.py. Let us see what is it going to give us for fib.py. Okay, fib.py.
Sir, why in front of some of the file there is a tiddle sign?
That is because I am using the Emacs editor, and in Emacs editor these are actually the backup files. Otherwise, in your editor it will create a py.bak file. This is a backup file. Okay. So, I have f handler dot read, and yes, I have read text x Python character set us ASCII. So, you mean to now you know that I have actually executed this particular command that I execute in the terminal with the help of the os.p open, correct. So, with the p open, right, we have already seen some percentage hist minus n, we have already seen os, list directory, current directory, get cwd, os.path.is file, os.path.is directory, okay, os.p open, and os.path. We have a lot of functions that are there in the os.path, okay. So, it is like one thing is called path.voc, I guess. Voc, wait, I think yeah, we will definitely come across it, okay, do not worry.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, do you have a class now?
Sir, no, sir. Can we continue from next class, sir?
I'll need another 5 or 10 minutes more, and then I will leave you. Okay, give me 5 or 10 minutes, and then I will leave you. Sorry for today. So that was the OS module, and we also have the sys module. So I would like to show you the sys module for command line arguments. Okay, so Python sys module, command line arguments. So we know that in C programming language, right, we know there is something called command line argument. So can we also do the same thing in Python? Yes, we can. And for that thing, right, I am going to show you the how to do the command line arguments, and for that, right, we have to use the module called sys module, and let's try to see what it is. So here, right, we have a simple program. What is this line? Hash not user bin Python. It's called a shebang line, and the line and the entire code is just import sys, print number of arguments, len sys dot argv arguments, and print argument list string of sys dot argv. So let's just take a new file. Yeah, and I'm going to save it as cmd command line args example1.py. Okay, so we have now saved it as command line args, but I know that it is user bin Python 3, not Python, on my computer. Okay, because I can take the terminal and I can type which Python 3, right. I know it is user bin Python 3. I have already shown you how to find it, right. So user bin Python 3, import sys, number of arguments. So let's try to run this program. Cd Python 3 clear, and Python. Oh, I don't need to. Oh wait, I can do a chmod a plus x command line arguments example pi, and I do a dot slash command line arguments command line args example 1 dot py with no arguments passed to it, and it says I made a mistake. Why? Because it is using the older way of Python code. Correct? Do you guys understand what I mentioned?
Yes, sir. Back.
Right, yes. And we are going to run it, and it says number of arguments, 1 argument, and the argument list is, the first argument list name is the program name itself. What if I try to run the code like this, Python 3 command line arguments, it's then Python 3 is the interpreter name. Okay, so the first command line argument will always be the program name. Okay, so in the previous one I used dot slash command line arguments underscore example 1 dot py. Right now I am using Python 3 space command line arguments example 1, and I can do 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15. So all of these will be listed as the arguments that we have passed through the command line, and all of these will be treated as strings. Okay, so this is how you will work with command line arguments in Python. sys.argv, and len of sys.argv is going to give you the how many command line arguments are there. Is that clear, students?
Yes.
Very good. So I have given you a very quick brief introduction to the OS and sys modules, okay, and about files and directories, and OS. Let me do os.path.walk. Is that there actually? Let me see. It's os.path or os.walk. Okay, so that's another function that I want to tell you, os.walk. So os.walk can actually help you go through the entire list of the files and the folders, okay, and it will allow you to go through the directories. You can go inside the directory, get the list of the files there, you can go inside the directory of the directory, and so on. Okay, so let's try to see this in the next time. Or what I would suggest right now is you please go and type os.walk question mark, okay, or let's try to see what is os.walk, os.walk python 3 documentation. So see, if you do not have this question mark, right, this is how you can actually find out. So os miscellaneous operating system interfaces, python os.walk method, okay, but is it going to give me a python documentation? I think this one, okay. So
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you can use the internet and you can try to understand what is this OS module, okay, and another thing would be the sys module, right? So I would use just sys.html instead of os.html and let's see whether it is going to work. Yes, it worked. Okay, so you can get the sys and os documentation, go through it. Okay, now you may ask me like, sir, there are a lot many things here to learn. Yes, there are a lot many things here to learn, but at least go through all the function names and try to understand what each is. Okay, these are all methods for this sys module. Okay, now that's it for today. But one more additional thing that I want to tell you now is about the next topics. Okay, about the next topics, and for that, right, I want to actually tell you about this topic, introduction to Django, and I want to tell you about web development, introduction to HTML and introduction to Django. So I am going to search for getting started with Django, okay, and writing your first Django app part 1. So that's where we will start with. Okay, so here I've taken you to a particular website where I have used a module. It's not a module, okay, it's a library package, Django, and Django is actually a MVC platform. So this one, okay, so I'll just type it in my screen message. Okay, Django is a Python web framework, allows you to create dynamic websites easily with Python. Okay, it uses some pattern called MVC pattern, that is model view controller pattern for developing or for the websites. Okay, now what I want to tell you is, I want each and every one of you to go through this Django tutorial. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Each and every one of you. There is no one who is going to be left behind. Everybody has to do it as part of your homework and exercise, because this is part of our course. And I will show you something called phdatmission.iit.ac.in. Right? I showed you this the other day, if I am right. Okay. So I am going to take you to the GitHub. Okay. Yeah. Anup JT, okay, and I am going to, let's say, just a second, repositories, and you can see that there is something called PHP applications over here, which is actually a private repository, and this code that you see over here, right, is written in Django, and is the code that runs the website phadmission.iit.ac.in. So which means that if I click to log in to apply or register for an account, if I click on register for an account, it will take me to the corresponding page where I can enter the applicant name, captcha, and all of these things, right? All of these things is provided by Django alone. And once I successfully register for an account, it will send me an email, and once it sends me the email, I can log in to apply, and then I can actually log in with my email address and my password. So let's say I log in with this username password. So I have this particular application which is incomplete. So I just open it for you and show you what that application is. So for each application, right, I will have multiple details to be entered and all of those things. So all of these things were done using just Django. So I have now tried to look at the preview. It says the form is incomplete. Please fill in all the details so that you will be able to submit it, and only then you will be able to see the preview as well. So yeah, so I go back, it will tell me that there is one application only. I can create another application, but I am not clicking on this because it will just create another application. Okay, and it right now the department is also not available here, so I am going to go there. Oh, department applying to is computer science, but it is not complete, right? So that is probably the reason why this is shown to be department NA for the time being. Okay, so as I told you, Django is something called a model view controller. So let me give you a very brief introduction into what is MVC as well. Okay, so MVC, I am just searching for MVC on Google, and did you ever expect that I would get something like this? So MVC or model view controller is a pattern in software design commonly used to implement user interfaces, data and controlling logic. So let me take you and show you one of the images of this MVC module. So I take the MVC, it shows me that this is what MVC means. View means something that I will be able to see, defines the display or the user interface. User clicks add to cart. What happens? That is what the view means. Controller means whenever I selected something into the cart, right, I will send the input to the server. So before that, right, we need to know one more thing: client server architecture. Okay, so client server architecture means that on the internet, okay, on the internet, if I try to go to www.iitt.ac.in, right, I go to iit.ac.in, something happens all the way in between, in the background. I do not know anything about what happens, but it achanak se by magic something comes up on the screen with Indian Institute of Information Technology Tiruchirappalli as the logo, and it tells me the PhD application's last date is 31st May 2022 and some details like this. So where am I getting this from? This is actually returned by the server. So I am a client, I am a computer who is connected on the internet, who will try to access iit.ac.in, and that is going to be served by a server. Okay, so which means that in the client server model, a client will request a resource and the server will return the resource. So the general purpose servers could be there could be database servers and all of those things. So for the time being, we know only about client and server. Okay, so we have a view, meaning that right now you are seeing the screen from the Google images, right, you are seeing this picture, but in this picture, right, is shown on your computer, and when I click on the next image, right, the next image has to come somewhere from the internet, meaning that some server has to send it to me and I should be able to view it on my screen. So view is something that I see on my screen, and view is something that is actually defined in the Django. So we have view there, which is used to define the, let's say, the display. It could be add to the cart. So if it is a shopping cart application that I have created, then if I click on one item and click on add to cart, then it is added to the cart, and that is how I will define the view. and once the view sends the input data from the user to the controller contains the logic, okay, contains the control logic. That is, example, receive update from view, then notifies model to add item. And model is the database. Database means it is the place where you will store the data in a structured manner, and there is some relationship between the items. So we have something called model, controller and view, and Django is a model view controller based framework which based on Python, which allows us to do rapid web development. Okay, so you can just go to tutorials point for MVC framework, read about MVC framework, okay, and you can see that there are MVC frameworks in almost every popular programming language that you can think about. Okay, so that is about Django and the MVC framework. So you can see that I have sent you a couple of links here. Two links are pretty simple. I defined and explained to you about the OS and the sys modules, and then I told you about the Django project. It's just an introduction. We haven't actually jumped into it, right? We haven't actually delved into it. We are just trying to explain what is Django. We are just trying to understand what is Django before we delve into that. Okay, so I've sent you a link for getting started with Django and tutorial 01. Okay, so it is trying to tell you how to create a project. So Django admin. So first you have to install Django, and once Django is installed, you can do Django admin start project my site, and this will actually create the certain files in your directory. With the my site directory is created, and then manage.py, then another my site file directory with init.py, settings.py, urls.py, asgi, wsgi.py, etc. are created, and these files are mentioned what it is over here in this particular highlighted part. Okay, and once you have run made some changes, or let's see whether the program works, whether the web server works, we can actually run the developmental server with python manage.py run server, and it will start your developmental server at a particular local IP address on a particular port, and you will be able to click on this particular link or copy this link and go to that particular website, and it will work. So let's just try whether it's going to work or not. Okay, so I'm just going to see. I'm just going to say I'm taking my terminal, clear, okay, and just making it bigger for you so that you will be able to see it. And I'm going to type python 3 space -m Django. So instead of python 2, I will say python 3, and it says that I have the version python Django 3.0.5 or 3.0.5. So I have some Django version installed on my computer. If I do not have it, I will install it with this pip3 install Django. Okay, so let me not do that because I have already installed it. So Django is there. Now I'm just going to create a new Django project. So mkdir Django Django. So I've created a new folder called Django in my Python 3. So home Anup Python 3 Django. I'm in the folder Django. And over here I am going to type Django admin. Wow, you can see that there are some project that has already been created, right? So over here I am going to create CS151. So, and I do an ls, you can see that it has created a new directory called CS151, and I go into the directory CS151, CS151, okay, and I do an ls here. You can see that there is another directory inside that called CS151 and a file called manage.py. I am going to see what is there in the manage.py. So cat manage.py, and you can see that there is some Python code obviously in there. There is something related to exception here. There is something related to try catch statement. There is like a function called main, okay, and the main function is called if the file is run as a script, Okay, so that is what you see in the manage.py. So again ls, and I am going back, I am going into the directory that I am seeing there and do an ls. You can see that there is init.py, asgi.py, settings.py, urls.py, wsgi.py, and all of those things are there, just like how we have seen over where here, correct? Yeah. So these are the things that we have seen over here. Now I just want to see whether the program, whether I will be able to run this server or not. So I am just going to see Python 3 run, oh I am sorry, it has to be manage.py run server. So I went to the directory and I typed Python 3 manage.py run server, and it says watching for file changes with stat clear error, performing syschecks, system check, identified no issues. You have 17 unapplied migrations. Your project may not work properly until you apply all the migrations. That is fine, which you should understand and see what is happening. So right now we know that we have received a link like this. So let's try to copy this link and open our terminal and go and see whether it works. I clicked on it and it says the install worked successfully. Congratulations, you are seeing this page because debug is equal to true is in your settings file and you have not configured any URLs, right? And it says that Django documentation, if you want to read the Django documentation, go here. If you want to create see a tutorial for creating a simple polling application, you can go here. If you want to get more details about the Django community, you can go here. Okay, so essentially what we have seen is that we have seen that Django is an MVC framework which can be used for creating websites, dynamic websites rapidly. Okay, and I want each and every one of you go through these things. Okay, and this will be your lab exercise for tomorrow, and you have to create, each of you have to create the poll application. Okay, so create the poll application. So that is already as per the tutorial. So which means that you can start right away and submit it by tomorrow evening by 9 p.m. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So you have to create the Django app, and then finally, actually I want you to create it as a Git repository. Okay. So I want you to create a GitHub account. Okay. So create a GitHub account, host your Django project on the GitHub account, and then when you submit, right, you are just going to submit the link to your repository. So say for example, github.com/anoopjt/phd applications. That's my repository, correct? So all of you will submit just the URL. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So there is a bit of work involved here. You have to learn Django, not learn Django, but you have to go through this tutorial, create the poll app, okay, by following this tutorial, and each of you has to do that. Okay, that's it for today, guys. And another thing is, one more thing, before we saw Django, right, it was written introduction to HTML. Are ye kya hai abhi? Because on the internet, right, when we go to IIIT website and we right click on this page and we see view the page source, we can see that this is actually HTML. How many of you know that HTML is what is used for creating the web pages?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I guess some students obviously knew about that. So that is pretty good. Okay, which means that we can write, this is how we will write simple websites. Okay, so introduction to HTML is also important. Getting started. Okay, and for this one, right, I would suggest you go through this particular resource, which is W3 Schools HTML, and it will also help you to try this particular program here itself. So there are examples given. This is a very simple page with a page title and some information which is in a heading and some paragraph. This is in a paragraph, and when you try to yourself, it opens it in a different page, and this is what it has written. If I want, I can have another paragraph say like this. I'm just going to add another paragraph here as an example. And I click on run, and that has come here. Let's say I want to add another heading, just another heading, or just another subheading. And run it. Correct? So this is what HTML is. So we have an introduction to HTML and an introduction to Django here, but Django is the most important part here, and HTML is not the most important thing, but definitely HTML is required. So I want you to go through this also, but this thing you can do it later, but for sure tomorrow's assignment would be, lab exercise would be getting started with Django, and you have to implement the polls app. Okay, clear students? Any doubts? You can ask me now,
Clear,
or else
sir.
I am done. Okay, so thank you so much for the time, students. So today we have actually covered a set of topics. We have looked at the exercises for files and exceptions. We have looked at some questions regarding files and exceptions, and then we learned about the OS and the sys modules. Of course, we did not write many programs, but I showed you how we can use the OS and the sys modules, and I have also shown you the GitHub Extensify. Say, let me show you GitHub Extensify, right, which is a Python code. So you will get to know about the OS module from the Extensify itself. You can read the code of Extensify. Okay, all of you please do that. Okay, so you will get a clearer idea of what is happening and what is expected. And after that I showed you about something called Django, where Django is a MVC framework used to create websites using the MVC framework. Okay, and the MVC framework is like model, views and controllers, where the model is a separate entity, view is a separate entity, and controller is a separate entity. So the Django separates the model, views and controllers are three different things, and then the model, view and the controller interact with each other so as to produce the final output. So you please go through the MVC and then get started with Django also. That's it. Thank you everyone. Attendance. CS151 attendance. So I told you PHP applications, right? PHP applications is an example for your Django application.
Abhishek present, sir.
Abhishek. Ayan.
Aditya present, sir.
Aditya.
Akash present.
Akash.
Afrit present, sir.
Afrit.
207 disconnected in between, sir.
Okay, thank you.
13 present,
Raj
sir.
present, sir.
13. Who is present?
13.
Ruturaj. Yeah. Both marked.
Sir, 14 Dheeraj present, sir.
Okay.
Sir, Bhadraksh present.
Badraksh. Bhupesh.
Sir, roll number 1 is also present.
Roll number 1.
Sir, 16 present, sir.
16. Okay.
18.
18. Yes. Just one
Sir,
second.
22.
Sir, 21.
21.
Sir, 26, sir.
22.
Sir, 27, sir.
Sir, 22.
26,
Sir, 19
27, 19,
29 present.
29,
Sir, 28 Dhanush also present.
28. Thank you.
30 present, sir.
Thank you. 30%. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35.
34 present.
34.
35 present.
35 was also
35
present.
also.
Yeah.
Sir, 35 present.
Yeah. 34 and 35 marked present. 36, 37. Okay. So I'll tell you the absentee ones. 6, 9, 10, 11, 15, 17, 20, 23, 24, 25, 31, 32, 33, 36 and 37. Okay guys, thank you so much everyone. Let's meet in the next class. If you have any doubts, do note it down and ask me, okay, because now we will be going to higher and higher topics very faster. Thank you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.